Welcome to Oh Brother, a podcast of three brothers trying to figure it all out, with your hosts, Brandon, Collin, and Aaron. On this week's show, world-class fiddler.
Dang it!
There we go. That's what's up.
That's exactly what I meant to do. Dang it. So, so you will notice up in the upper right-hand corner, you should see something that says like uploaded to of whatever chunks.
Oh, yeah. 3 of 3. Okay.
Yeah. So right now, your end is recording and uploading your recorded end. So technically, it should sound better because you will have a local recording on your end directly from your microphone, not impacted by Zoom. Which is good and bad, and I will tell you why. Yeah. Because Zoom actually does a lot to make the sound somewhat decent. This software does none of that.
So it's just raw.
It's just raw audio.
So just the unfiltered dulcet tones of my lovely voice,
and any background noise or echo you happen to have in the room.
I mean, yeah, but I usually. My behind the scenes is because like I live in the apartment, right? Usually I have the gain and the volume pretty far down on my microphone, and then I just like sit pretty close to it so that it cuts down. It usually cuts down on a lot of the background noise.
Sure.
Because it's not being like hypersensitive, right? Because this sucker, if you like really crank it up, I'm sure you could probably hear Susan in the next room, right? But like if
yes. And so I'm more worried about like me, who kind of travels in like I am in
he's always in a random place, like who knows where Collin is. It's just
the cheese office right now. I mean, I'm talking I'm at least talking into like a little bit of like wood, but then around me is nothing but concrete blocks. So
you should probably create a little screen out of cardboard macaroni boxes that you can sort of put.
I should just walk across the street and ask them and say, please, sir, may I have a box?
Yeah.
And they'll say, no, thank you. Go away. So yes, I do have plans to make the office more recording friendly. I will say that because I am finding myself doing a lot more recording here. I mean, I have a permanent, not permanent, but an attached boom arm for a microphone. So, because I kept forgetting it, I always have to like rest the microphone on top of a box. Like,
no, that's fair.
I can't do this.
Yeah. That's good planning, because also that's not like an easy transportable thing, like a giant boom arm stuck in somewhere. Like,
right. Yeah. So anyway, I'm trying to do that to make this more recording friendly, because it would be nice not have to worry about it. But then I also hate having the idea of like having two sets of things of like here's where so anyway, trying to not go too crazy.
Well, I mean, even if it's just like you get like some little thing to like hang a blanket on the wall, right?
Yeah, like, that would really help me if I could just hang some like a tapestry behind. So I need to go tapestry shopping is what I need to go do.
Tapestries. This is a castle. You have tapestries. Yes.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that would be good. There are just simple things that I could do to make this more recording friendly. I am glad that Dad helped me source a desk, and it has the flat desk, but it also has a piece that sits on top of it that has some cabinets kind of up by your head.
Oh yeah.
And it actually has a sound deadening board right in front of it. So I try and get as close to the desk as I possible, so I can kind of talk into that little cavern, so it doesn't have too much behind me. But yeah, so that's That's a recording update. Everybody, you're welcome.
Right. But before you go, my voice, you can hear me okay?
Yeah, you sound great.
Okay.
You sound great.
Because you're coming through like weird. Like all of a sudden it started making this weird, like, I don't really know how to describe this noise, but it's like.
Uh-oh. Is it like a buzzing noise or is it warbly?
When you're talking, it like.
It buzzes?
Yeah, it like crackles.
Oh no. Uh-oh.
I don't know if that is.
I don't hear that on.
Okay, well, that might just be it coming through to me. So we'll just see how it goes.
Okay, we'll see. It's be fun.
Yeah.
So this recording feature, we have a live chat in here, which is what Zoom offers. It also has, you should be able to edit notes, I think, like in real time. So like if we did have when we put together the script for the show, we could just live edit.
Yeah, definitely.
Which is super important for us, obviously.
Obviously, because we definitely script everything.
Turn page. But yeah, so that's all that. Gosh, I can't even remember. What is time? What is time?
I don't even know. It's ridiculous. I can't.
Did I tell you that okay, I think, I don't know if I got this point. Did I tell you how many miles I put on the rental car? Did I tell you this?
I didn't get a final tally.
Okay.
You gave us a number before you turned it in, but I don't think we received a final tally.
Oh,
of this,
okay.
Of this rental carage.
Oh, well, so I don't. I know that whenever I got this car, it had 34,000 miles on it. Okay. 34,000 and plus or minus a couple things.
Yeah.
Okay. When I turned it in, it had over 40,000 miles on it.
Ay.
So, and here's the thing, and here's why that caught me off guard, because every time I could nowhere, and I'm a fiddler, right? I fiddle.
Oh, okay? We know.
I'm
aware.
World class fiddler here, and I could not for the life of me find a consistent trip calculator. And you may be wondering, I'm sorry, what? Yeah, exactly. There was no place that had not static, but like you could go to a screen and you could see how many miles you had driven, because it would reset every time you A, shut off the car, or B, refill the gas. So
that seems not helpful at all.
So every time it was just like, it would just disappear. And so the trip was when you started and stopped the car. Basically, that was a trip, and it would be like, okay, I'm reset, which makes no sense to me at all.
Yeah, me neither. That is
because I guess, but then again, I don't know how many people use Trip A and Trip B on their cars.
I mean, I never do, but
so,
my trip is like generally, I'm not going very far at all. So I'm just
sure. What I do is when we go on a big trip, I always use Trip B to log total miles for trip, and Trip A is reset every time you fill up with gas, so you can keep log that way, and you can calculate your miles per gallon. And so I just have that running total of using both of those simultaneously. And otherwise, if I'm not on a big trip, I don't really use Trip B unless I'm trying to log certain things. So like right now, I'm in Springfield and I'm logging my total mileage for my entire time here in Springfield. I want to know that so that I can keep track of it easier than just watching the big odometer roll around. And
fair.
Right. It's just easier. So you just couldn't do that in the Corolla. So whenever I finally looked at the end number, I was like, dear goodness. Because then I looked at my original paperwork and I was like, 6,000 miles in a month. That's
that's a lot of miles.
That's a lot of miles. So, but then I was like, but it's 100 and not to be creepy here, but it's 127 miles from Springfield to home. And if you do that,
well, that'll do it right there. That's kind of
right. If I'm doing that like in the morning and then I come back at night and I have to go back down the next morning and I'm coming up on the weekends all of a sudden, and then I'm driving maybe 80 miles in a day doing visits, all of a sudden it's not so
yeah, that's a lot.
Not a whole, it adds up real fast. So I'm sure, and I'm pretty sure that most rental cars get shuffled off the motor coil. Mortal coil. I said motor coil, which actually makes sense because it says anyway.
Well, yeah, it's a motor.
Like around 40,000 miles. So I turned it in just in time for them to shuttle it out. And remember, listeners, never buy cars that were from a rental company, because when I got this, it said change the oil. And I kept calling them every couple days saying, no, really, it says change the oil. And they said, that's fine. Don't worry about it. For the entire month and a week that I had it. It said, no.
Now the valves are melted. It's really weird.
It definitely, the engine did not sound healthy whenever I returned it, but they wouldn't
was it clicking really loudly?
Not real loudly, but it was definitely getting to that point.
But it was there.
It was there. It was definitely audible when you're. But again, like I was taking pictures and texting them through emails and being like, "Hey, what do you want me to do?" And they were just like, "It's fine. Just keep driving it. No, don't worry about changing it out. Just keep driving it." Okay, whatever you say. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's rough. That's no good.
So I don't recommend those. But yeah, that's drive time. So now I've got the Honda back. I'm trying to not drive as much on it because we are trying to sell it.
Yeah, eventually. Maybe.
Eventually. Yeah.
Never.
Oh, it's so
I like
bad.
to imagine. Listeners, this week on Collin drives every car for sale in his county.
It's so bad.
I like to imagine what's happening is the people at the dealership that he keeps going to, they just have this big dossier folder on him that has like all of his likes and comments and dislikes, and they're going to just nail him with something he just can't say no to. What do you think? They're just going to get him like
I know.
big. They're just going to hook him good. Blam. And he's not going to be able to escape. And he's not going to be able to say no. And he's just going to be caught.
Oh my
caught
gosh.
forever. Like
I'm serious. I just wanted to drive the 4Runner, and then they were like, and then I noticed like they were mentioning about other used cars, and they just like they said GX, and I was like, oh, like
yeah, they just were casually other used cars near you, the person that comes all the time.
All the time.
Look at used cars.
Yeah.
They know.
So I did drive the GX, and then they were like, oh, but this one, they said, oh, here's exactly what he said. Not even kidding. He just paused and went, oh, this one's got more miles on it that you probably want. And he kept talking. And I was like, no. Tell me more. What is it? And he said, oh, it's an LX 570. And I went, I'm driving that right now.
You see? So when they find a lower mileage one, they'll be like, hey, guess what we got?
I mean, low mileage. I mean, this one had like, so it was a 2013. So it's older.
Yeah.
But I bought the Honda. Like, let's remember, I bought the Honda when it was 10 years old. So like, I don't, I'm not really. And he said more miles on it. It had 120,000 miles on it. And for that engine and the LX, I was like, it's not even sweating at this point. Like, what are you talking about?
That's true.
Like, considering how every used one, they're like 349,000 miles. Like, okay. So
that's a good point.
I'm not even worried about that. But I did drive, and oh man, it really ruined me. It's bad. I've never driven one of those before. I've always wanted to, which is one of the reasons I wanted to.
Goodness.
I've always wanted one of these things. So I was like, I'm here. Let's just do this. There's no way I'm actually buying this because it's not as large as a Suburban, but it's pretty close to the size of like the early 90s Suburban. So
they're pretty big.
They're pretty big, but they're not as massive as some of the more modern full-size SUVs. And it's actually considered a mid-size still, or like mid-size to full.
Is it?
Yeah. I think
weird.
It's because it's not as big as a Suburban, because I can still like a modern Suburban.
Yeah,
I cannot
is bigger than a Suburban. That thing is enormous.
Exactly.
It's always been enormous. Like, hey, what's the most enormous thing we can have ever? Oh, yes, this.
Yes.
That's what I
need. I'd actually never driven a Lexus anything. And so, and both of everything that I was driving was used, and like 2015, 2014, this was a 2013. I was like, this shouldn't come as a surprise, shocked at the how quiet everything was. Like, just utter silence from this massive, like, up under the hood is a V8, and you couldn't hear a single thing. Just nothing. There was no sound, and yet
that's kind of what they're known for, is being sneaky,
quiet, very quiet, and especially the GX. It's based off. It's the Land Rover Prada overseas, and so it's the smaller body size, but it's based on the It shares a lot with the 4Runner, but the inside of the 4Runner has a lot more space, because the walls are not as thick. in the GX, it has a very small interior compared to the body size, because they're like, no, everything quiet, lots of padding, no noise.
Lots of weight, lots of bad gas mileage, lots of giant engine.
Yes,
right. That's what you want when gas in Missouri is like
$4. Yeah,
$4.40 a gallon.
Yes,
that's perfect.
Yes, exactly. See, this is what I'm thinking. So I was just like, okay, whatever. Like, very nice to drive, very nice. And then I was like, no, I can't do this. So tomorrow I'm going to go drive an FJ Cruiser.
Oh Lord,
because it's here
for the 7th time, right?
I've never actually driven an FJ Cruiser.
You've been lusting after one for this long, and you've never driven one?
Exactly, because I hate talking to car salesmen.
Well, you couldn't. Listeners, I think he's over that. I don't know.
No, I try. I'm not there to be their friend, and I know, like, they're trying to be buddy and have a conversation, and they may be trying to help.
They're salesmen.
Yes,
that's a sales technique.
Yes,
you're falling for.
Yeah, no, I'm not. I clam up. It's like I'm talking to a police officer, FBI agent. It's yes or no as far as I can get, and if I have to go on and explain stuff, we'll do that. I hate the like, what do you do question, because they're trying to judge, like, based on what this person responds with. What do I think about their stature and like credit and like all this stuff for this car?
Can they afford this?
And can I?
That's why I can't talk to them, because they say, well, what do you do? Like, teacher. Anyway, they're just like, oh, okay, I'm going to go help this other customer who actually has money. Loser. Like, there's a...
No, I just, and they're trying to go like, okay, well, how, like, because I know what they're going to start doing is going, okay, how much wiggle room do I think this person has to get the extras and the add-ons and the little things and like all this to start building your profile? So that's why I keep them guessing of like, one day I'm in there to see a Toyota Corolla, and the next day it's a LX 570, and then the next day it's the Tesla, and then the next day it's a Mazda Miata.
Right.
Like, must keep them going.
Like, I've always wondered, can I actually fit in one of these? So I'm just here to test it out today.
I mean, if we're being perfectly honest, most of the things that I'm test driving are like, well, I've always wanted to, and it's sitting over there right now, which is what the LX 570 was. There's no way I could purchase this, because the gas mileage is abysmal. As I was driving it, I'm looking it down, I'm accelerating, and it was like 8. 8 inches, and I was like, that.
Yeah.
No, thank you. And just like,
there is no circumstance under which, like, even in 2015, 8 miles to the gallon should be acceptable.
No.
Right. That is a 1968 number. Okay.
Yes.
Like, that is not is not okay. Like, what are you doing with your life?
Right.
Why? How have you failed as an industry that if in 2015 you can get 8 miles to the gallon?
It's exactly. This is what I'm watching, and I'm going like, there's no like, and then it's just all the practicality stuff of just like, yeah, this is big, and what do I spend a lot of my time doing? City driving. What do I need to not be driving in city?
Something enormous.
Massive thing. Like if I was just, if all I did was do highway miles and go across fjords and climb mountains, maybe,
obviously,
like I would need to do this. Maybe but as it stands, of like, okay, sure, I have 2 hours of a highway drive. But then I'm bobbing and weaving in and out of traffic, going into apartment complexes, like winding streets. I don't need that. But with that said,
yeah, that's the humorous part about this, like, because Lexus is like they're not selling that car in Japan because it literally can't fit anywhere. Like, what are you gonna do? Drive that on some little tiny Japanese street? No. Get out. Like,
yes.
talk about knowing your market. Like, loser Americans need this big giant car.
Exactly. Yeah. It's where they quote unquote have room. So now,
have you seen a road in the Midwest? You have room.
I have room. Like, now with that said, did I absolutely love driving it? Yes. I loved every second of this. And this is probably mostly because the guy who was doing the test drive has while I don't like driving with the car salesman in the car, I do appreciate it whenever they have like a course to go on to showcase different features of the car. This has only happened one other time. And this time we got in and the guy said, we're going to go on this way, and just to show you kind of how it feels in different settings. And I was like, oh, well, that's really nice. Okay, let's do this.
Was it like a field, like a ditch?
Unfortunately, it was not showing its off-road prowess. But but it did.
Dang it. I was hoping it's like, all right, we're going to go, because Springfield is like this, right? We're going to go down here, and then there's a field. All right, turn it into the field. Let's go.
No, but we did go off some like very curvy, windy, hilly roads, which was good because I'm used to driving larger vehicles, larger trucks, Suburbans that have they have immense body roll, and you feel like you're about to tip over.
Oh yeah,
right. It adds
part of the excitement,
makes it lively.
Like, we hold on really tight.
At no point was there any of that at all, like zero. So that was pretty neat, and it actually didn't feel as big when you were on the roads. It only felt big when you started getting close to other cars. You were like, "Oh yeah, that's right. This thing is actually huge."
It's like, okay, now we're gonna drive around the square. Oh, dang.
Oh no. Yeah. Back up. Get away fast.
Yeah. Oh no. Can't do it. No.
So yeah, it's interesting. So tomorrow I've lined up my day. Okay.
Goodness.
So we're gonna drive. Don't hate me.
Listeners, we need an intervention. He has a problem.
Megan has to do something. Megan has in fact told me basically like we have one more week to pick something out or she's going to do it. So the FJ Cruiser is going to be
I want to know what Megan part of me really wants Megan to just pick something and I want to know what it is, like real bad. Like it's going to be like she's going to be like, that one. Okay, bye. Like,
how many doors does it have? Sweet, let's do it.
Yeah.
So tomorrow's
I want to know.
I don't. Tomorrow's going to be the FJ Cruiser. And then I'm going to go and test drive more sensible, something that actually would probably work for us is a Highlander, Toyota Highlander. It's more sedan-y, but and then on that lot, they also
93 Honda Civic hatchback.
No, close. They have a 2001,
the Del Sol.
They have a 2001 Land Cruiser that I am in fact. That does have 258,000 miles on it.
It's the dream come true, folks. This is it. This is what he's been waiting for the whole time. It's been building up to this.
So I'm
This is peak right here. This is the, if you've been climbing the proverbial mountain, this is the summit.
This is, in fact, what all of this has been building to is the culmination. It'll be the last car I drive, and I'll just roll home in a almost 22-year-old vehicle. Say, honey, I found it. It's perfect.
She will kill you. That's just.
But I'm there for the Highlander, and so I might as well. It's there. It's in the really ugly Land Cruiser gold thing that they also
ew, gross. No,
it's really disgusting. It's a really gross color.
That's bad.
But it's there.
Sometimes I know, but sometimes I think about, I look at car companies and I'm going why would you pick that color? Who's buying this? Because you only see them on the lot. You never see anybody driving them.
No.
So you're until 2 years later, and it was because it was still on the lot and nobody bought it. And they're like, all right, we're marking this sucker down. Got to get this thing out of here. And you end up with a gold Land Cruiser. And oh yeah.
Yes. I know.
Gross. It's so garish and disgusting. Okay.
So, I know it's very bad. It's very bad and gross. At least it doesn't have at least it does. It's not the gold with the chrome that the LX version has, where it's gold and chrome around
oh yeah, that's that's no good.
No, it's not good. So
nobody likes that.
This doesn't have that at least. But I again, it's one of those things. It's there. So we're gonna see, walk on over and say hi. And I think it's gonna be fine. So got my list, got my names of people I got to talk to. That's the other thing, is that everybody's moved to these automated text messages of confirming your time, talk to Jen. You're like, okay. So you walk in and they say, hi, can we help you? And you're looking at your phone. You're like, the robot said I needed to talk to Jen. And nobody has any idea what you're talking about. And they're like, just come over here. And I realize, that was just a fake name to get you in the door so that you could just go talk to somebody, because that person doesn't exist.
Yeah, the robots lie. That's what they do.
Everybody knows. Yeah. Everybody knows. So, yeah, that's anyway.
Oh dear.
So we'll see what happens to that.
Well, all right. Good luck. Stay tuned, listeners. The saga continues.
It's going to be the Land Cruiser.
And it's been building to that for over 10 years.
It has. That's so good.
It's been 10 years, listeners, of me getting out of the blue just pictures of Land Cruisers in a text message, 11:30 at night, 7 o'clock in the morning. 1:30 in the afternoon. Doesn't matter. No. Just be and a lot of times it's listeners, it's just the picture. That's it.
They're so pretty.
He'll just send a screenshot of an Auto Trader listing. No context, no comment. Sometimes he'll be this one, and that's it. That's all I say. I haven't heard from him in 3 days, and then I just get a text of a car that says,
this one.
This is what? What?
This is it. Yeah.
I need you to know, listeners, what I've been dealing with for so long.
It's so bad. So, yeah, it's because they're just so pretty. So, anyway, enough about that. They're so. Look. Oh, here's another one. Okay. Anyway, so I'll say this. Yeah. Next.
Oh man.
Enough about my neuroses.
Right.
How's your how's your I don't know if you want to jump right to this or not, but I need to touch back on your Old English literature book.
I've only read a little bit of the introduction because I still have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 books I'm in the middle of not finishing. So I sort of set a task for myself to whittle this number down. That's not counting the book I have it on my desk at work, but that's a book for work. So like, I'm not counting that.
Sure.
So I have several that I need to get through, but like this book, I'm like one book I'm on the last chapter. This other book I'm almost done with. So there's 3 books I have that I'm almost finished with. And so then maybe we'll see where we get to. But
okay.
That's what. So we haven't progressed very far. Just a little bit in the introduction. Some casual perusing of other old English literature things online, and just sort of seeing what other things I could get to accompany it eventually. But that's just where we're at right now. So not too much progress currently. I warned you, this happens sometimes.
It's okay. It's okay.
What happens when you have attention problems and love reading? So you kind of, like, I don't want to read this book right now. But so now I have options, right? Like I can
I
don't think this is helping. I don't think this is helping my attention problems, but we're dealing. So this is what we do. Yeah, because sometimes when I read only one book, I like fall into this thing where like I kind of lose interest for a while, and then like I just stop reading altogether because I don't want to finish the book that I have started. But like I have this thing where I like need to finish it. Like I'm not going to not finish the book.
Sure.
It just sometimes takes a long time. So I'll just kind of set it down and pick up something else. So I have, excuse me. So I have like multiple books. So it becomes a exercise of which one am I going to read today? Like that's what I'll read. Like one day I'll read some of one, and it does really help that a lot of them are sort of nonfiction. So like the way that most nonfiction books are structured, you can just read like a section and then it's fine.
Right.
It's kind of like contained all together, like blap, you read that part. It's okay. Done. Only one of them is, well, I guess 2 technically are fiction books. So like that's not too bad. And one of them is a murder mystery, so like you read it really fast. So I've basically just been reading that, and so it's almost done. So yeah, I have some stuck in random, and then I have my just ongoing Tolkien pile over here that I'm just sort of reading through. Every once in a while, I'll read a different section of this or that or whatever. Like that's what.
Very nice.
You know how it is. It's very, that we're not even counting that pile because that's just an ongoing.
Sure.
Ongoing. It's almost like a research assignment, right? Like I'm just.
At least are you taking any notes on them or not?
I probably should be, but no. Like you feel like that sometimes when you're doing it. You're like, oh man, what is this? Especially when you're reading some like these really deep cuts, like the Book of Lost Tales Part 2. Some very ultra nerdy stuff there. So like that's what.
Sure.
And you don't really need notes for that because it's very odd, and it's like got Christopher Tolkien's commentary in it.
Oh my gosh,
these writings. It's like, yeah. So like the Book of Lost Tales is basically a collection of the original draft for the Silmarillion stories that Christopher found in various folders and desk drawers and notebooks and stuff, because Tolkien very famously would just write on anything and shove it somewhere. Like, and so a lot of his commentaries are like, this is, blah, 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 but cannot be precisely dated to when it was actually written. All this stuff, like based on the handwriting, it might be here, but who knows? Like, like we've talked about before, he's very like, I feel like his writing process was very chaotic at sometimes, right? Like he would just be like, just must write now. And just like, he would just write on stuff, right? So he had like little notebooks that he would kind of keep, but also they're interspersed with just like random sheets of paper that are just like jammed in there because he wrote something down one time and was like, I need to keep this plan. Like,
yeah. So which one are you reading through now, or you have you're parsing through? It was the The secrets. What was that?
Oh, okay. So it's called the Book of Lost Tales.
Okay.
It's part of I am slowly amassing the History of Middle Earth collection.
Okay.
It's like an anthology in 12 books, of which I have just a couple.
I see.
And it's a lot of like early draft material for stuff. So like the Book of Lost Tales is like it's kind of like the earliest collection of things that would later become the Silmarillion.
Okay.
Right. And so it's kind of like the very, very, very early draft. It kind of is like Tolkien's early idea for Middle Earth in general was that it was going to be like a mythology for modern England. So it would actually be connected to the modern day.
Sure.
Right. So like this history of Middle Earth would actually be the history of English stuff.
Oh, he's going to connect it all the way through.
Yeah. So in this version, basically what's happening is there's a guy who has traveled to this island and he's hearing these stories about the elves in Middle Earth times during what would later be the Silmarillion, right? The legends of the first age of Middle Earth. He's hearing this from these people in this like tavern on this island somewhere, right?
Oh, that's cool.
And then he's going to bring those stories back to England. So this is kind of like that was his thought process. Like, how do these connect? How do I connect this to modern day?
Yeah.
It's like, that's what he wanted to do originally, was like make it like a mythology for the English people.
Sure.
You know, for the English language, right? Like modern English language, make it be like a mythological origin of English.
Right.
That's what he was doing with his like weird language, like Elvish and Dwarvish language obsession, right? Of doing all this stuff.
But again, getting back to he firmly believed and wrote as if all this stuff just existed and he was kind of uncovering it, which very much fits into that mindset of like, I'm sitting, you know, like, yeah, we're discovering these stories, we're hearing them. And as he's putting that together.
Oh, yeah. And like that, you can tell that because in his responses to things, like in interviews and letters and stuff that he would write, and people would ask him about like, well, what about this in Middle Earth? And he would just straight up be like, I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, that would be his answer. He would go, I have no idea. Like, what about this character? What did they do during this time? And he'd be like, I don't know. Like, he would just say that. And so that kind of fits into that motif of like him. It's almost like he's a figure of like, like you said, uncovering this legendarium of like, oh yes, I'm translating this from Elvish to, you know, that's like what it's like, he's Bilbo, right? Translating this to the thing. Okay. So he would just often say things like, yeah, I don't know. Or sometimes in the book, it'll be like, but of this, no tale tells.
Right.
So that's his answer. Like, I have no idea. I haven't thought about this yet, so we'll just do it.
To do.
And that's what the History of Middle Earth. This series, this History of Middle Earth like volumes collection. It's basically like it kind of works through all the drafts, like old draft material. So this is like the earliest version, and then the next book in the series is like, you know, it'll be just focused on like certain early versions of like parts of a story, right? And then there's some later that I don't have, but they're like the early version of like the Lord of the Rings part. Okay. Right. And it's just kind of like early draft material. So I have that I'm reading through. That's a very slow read because it's so dense. Oh my gosh, it's so rough.
Now, this actually gets to a very interesting aspect in that Tolkien had his son around to piece together his writings. And something that is currently very hot topic right now is the generation of content using AI. I'm not sure how, and one of the things that they're doing right now is I've been following two things. One is called Dolly 2, where you can just give a text prompt for what you want a picture to be, and it will make it for you. Anything at all.
Oh, yeah. I've seen an article about that.
Yeah. It's fun to play with. There's another one, so I forget what it's called, but it's run through Discord. It does the exact same thing. one kind of hitting the big podcasting world right now is AI was trained on all of Joe Rogan's podcasts, and AI was trained.
Oh boy!
Well, wait a minute. AI was trained on all of Steve Jobs' interviews and written commentary, and then the AI generated an interview of what would happen if Steve Jobs was interviewed on Joe Rogan's podcast.
Oh my!
And it's an
how many times was DMT mentioned?
Okay, I don't know. Probably too many times.
We're gonna search for that. 417.
Yes. And obviously you can tell that it's interesting because Steve Jobs doesn't have as much material out there as Joe Rogan to be trained on. So his is actually much smoother than Steve Jobs, but it's content that didn't formerly exist, but now is. How would you feel if instead of Tolkien's son piecing together these stories and putting together, AI was trained on the writings and then told to develop a story in the likeness of this?
Well, I think that's different than what Christopher did, right? Because Christopher just took so like when Christopher published the Silmarillion, right? Because that was published posthumously from Tolkien. Basically, he dug through this apparent mountain of paperwork and just picked the best versions of everything to try to make a cohesive thing, sure. Right? And he later wrote about like, yeah, I made the wrong choice here, and now that I've found this other stuff, I'm not so confident in including this bit, right? But it's like, he was just kind of going with what he had. So, but it's not necessarily generating new things. It's just collating a lot of existing material into a cohesive thing, right? So I feel like that's different than like the generation of new material. But on the other hand, like I don't, there is like this weird thing in your brain that's like, well, if AI does it, it's weird. But like if another author does it, like it's fine, right? Like, because basically that's what, happens in other like book universes, like the old like Star Wars expanded universe, like random people would just write a Star Wars story that just fit into the overall world of Star Wars. You know what I mean? So like, I don't really have a problem with that. Mm-hmm. Like that's a common thing, but like, I don't know. I think there's some hang up on like if AI did the same thing, like it's just kind of weird. I don't know. I don't really know how I feel about that because like the humanist part of my brain goes, well, what are you missing then if it's just like generated, right? Like, are you missing something if you just get generated lines of, from somewhere? Because like when you read something, and kind of, I think this is what people get upset about with the art thing too. Like art is supposed to express something. Right. It's not like done just for, I mean, it can be done just for fun, but like art is supposed to represent something. There's usually some sort of message or theme or emotion or something in there. Right. And so I feel like a lot of people, probably myself included, have a hard time like trying to understand like, well, how did this like computer generate emotion? Right. Now, the opposite part of this would be like, well, the argument of like, well, it doesn't necessarily, the argument I've made myself numerous times about like, well, the author's intentions don't necessarily matter. It's the viewer/reader's intentions that are the most important because that's what you take away from it. So in that vein, I guess it doesn't necessarily matter who creates the art because it's my responsibility as an art viewer to find meaning or take away something from it.
Right.
And if I don't find it in an AI painting, that's fine, because I also don't find it in many like human paintings. Right. Some human paintings, I just like, this painting kind of sucks. I don't really know why people like this. Right. But then other ones, I'm like, yeah, I just really like this. And it's, for not even like, there's all subjective reasons, right? Some of them are just objectively better, like a Vermeer or a Rembrandt. Like, it's just objectively better than a lot of other stuff out there. You know what I mean? Like, it just is. It can make you kind of think about stuff or ponder something, or, just have a feeling. And where other pieces of art, like, I just don't connect with it at all. And it's not even because of the painter. It's just because I don't like the art, right? Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, a lot of times with art or literature, right, what you're connecting with is the author, right? So like if you think of in terms of like poetry, right, when you read an Emily Dickinson poem, right, you're not just a fan of the poem, you also become kind of a fan of Emily. You know what I mean? And so you have a person to connect with. You have something else to connect with. When you read a Hemingway, right, you become sort of aware of what a crazy person Hemingway was, right? Like, you're just kind of weird and all these things. And you do the same thing with Emily Dickinson, right? I like her poetry a lot. I find her poetry very fascinating. And part of the reason I find her poetry fascinating is because I think she is just super interesting, right? Like, I don't know. I just think she's a really interesting person. And so, but you discover that through the poetry. You see the poetry first, and then you find the person when you dig deeper. Like, when you read Tolkien, you read the work first, but then you discover who Tolkien is, right? You get this sense of him. But with an AI, there's nothing to get a sense of, right? You're not connecting with anything because there's nothing there to connect with. You know what I mean? Like, it's just generating from a numerical table. So you might find like a false sense of that, maybe on some level, but there's no like author to connect with.
Sure.
There's no artist on the other end putting feeling or emotion into the thing. It's a data table. So I feel like while AI can make art, I don't think that it's as connectable as like other things, because you're also connecting with the person. I think the person is important, right? And even if the person is like controversial or bad, right? Like, there's a lot of authors, like, you're like, I don't like them as a person. Like, they're jerks, they're terrible. But I like the work, right? Like, I find it interesting. You get that, but you have a feeling, you have an opinion about them. There is somebody there to have an opinion about.
Right.
You can feel about them, right? I don't like Oscar Wilde. He's annoying. His writing hurts me. But like, him as a person, he's a crazy character, right? He's interesting. Don't want to read anything he wrote because I don't like his style. But like, I still have an emotion about him. You know what I mean? Like, I have a strong emotion about Oscar Wilde.
Well, and
not necessarily a positive one, but I have an emotion.
Well, and that
right. I don't care about curtains, Oscar Wilde. I don't care.
And what gets really
again, some of his shorter stuff in poetry is actually pretty good. I just don't like a picture of Dorian Gray. That's really my big hang up here. But
and what gets me is you can actually, like, right now, like, you can go in, this is just painting wise, but you can say such and such a painting, like cat and dog walking down the beach in the style of, and you can insert an artist, and it will write it, it'll paint it like that person painted it. And there's lots of things that go into that of like, well, isn't that just like, how did they know what that style was? Well, obviously it sucked up all that information from all the photos of all their art and just regenerated something using that style. There are these ones that are getting to that point where you can go, write a story in the style of insert author. And I guess part of that is that their authentic voice? How is it generated? What is it pulling from? Because if you exclude some material, exclude some Oscar Wilde material, that might generate and say, no, kind of like, no, this is the subset of information I want you to look at. That's what we are going to use to define what it means to be Oscar Wilde. Well, someone else may come along and go, well, you didn't include these 4 books. Why didn't you? And so you can get different flavors and takes on the same stuff it's all based off of what you feed it, right? Especially when you start asking for in the style of.
Yeah. Now, here's the other thing that I think that brings up a good point. Because now the system is locked into doing a thing. And it's going to only do, like, if you say, give me the style of, whoever, like, it's only going to be searching from that, and it can only reproduce that, right? Whereas somebody like Tolkien, or like an artist, for artist example, we'll take Picasso, right? Notorious for doing all kinds of different
styles, yeah,
right, and different things. So, or like Hemingway would be another good one for an author, right? Like if you read Farewell to Arms, but then you read The Old Man in the Sea, there are some differences.
A little bit, yeah.
Here, right? We're dealing with some different emotions. I mean, still the same, because he wasn't like, just the happiest guy all the time. But like, there is growth. And authors and artists and singers and painters grow and change and evolve over time, right? And I think that, like, back to Tolkien, like, that's what this giant pile of books I have on my table really shows you, that he was just always changing his mind about something, right? He was changing his mind. He was moving stuff. This is why the Silmarillion never got published, because he'd be like, actually, hold on, wait. And then he would like go and fix something, right? And in his work, people talk about plot holes. Like, well, maybe, but it's mostly just because he didn't get around to fixing it yet.
Right. It wasn't done.
He'd probably been like, oh yeah, I got to get to that. And it was on the list. And then he just never got around to it because he was so like, I'm going to do this and I got to fix that. And I'm going to blah, blah. Ooh, I got this new idea. What if this makes it better? Right. Always constantly evolving, changing, doing stuff. If you just feed a set parameter into a thing, it can only give you a set parameter out.
Right.
Yep. That's just how it works. You can't, I mean, with current technology, obviously, who knows? Like, that's a whole other conversation for later on. If it was aware of itself, right? Who knows? But right now it means set criteria in, set criteria out.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, you probably can open up the parameters, and there's probably some where you can just be like, free reign, do whatever, like whatever. But like, if you're going to give me the style of a Van Gogh and then you just spit me out of Van Gogh, well, like, that's not helpful. But again, that's a guy who had lots of different sketches, and then like the post-impressionistic thing, the evolving, changing through that, like all that stuff, right? Like, you can't, when you think of a person like Van Gogh, you have a very specific image comes to mind, right? Post-impressionist, Starry Night, right? The cafe at night, whatever. But like, that's not all he did, right? There are other things that he did before he got there, right? Like, that's not the only thing he's known for, right? Or you take somebody like Jackson Pollock, who his art is like memed a lot, because you're like, bro, it's just like splatters on a canvas. Like, yeah, but a Pollock painting isn't necessarily about the end result. It's about the making of the painting. That's the important part for him. It wasn't really what it looked like when it was finished. It was while it was happening. It's very in the moment, like spontaneous kind of plan, right? So the act of painting was the important part, not the end result necessarily. You know what I mean?
Right.
So like there's all these other different ways to express in medium, and like you're trying to express something, you're trying to think about something, and if you're just generating, you're not expressing anything. Right? Like even if you tell the AI, like if you just be like sad, right? It's just gonna look through a list of criteria and give you like the Cliff Notes version, like dark colors, rain, a crow, maybe. Like, you know what I mean? Like, just like,
Yeah.
You know, like, so I feel like, you know, you're not getting the emotion part. You're not so like the computer wasn't upset or sad when it painted it because it doesn't have a feeling.
Yeah. Again, what was it fed to? That's going to train. It's all about training. About
and so how can I connect with that emotionally if I'm sad, right? I think you lose something if you're like, I know that like the artist was feeling this way when he painted it, so I can understand the emotion, I can connect with that, right? But if I know like the computer was told the word sad, well, then does the painting lose some of the emotional tie? I think it does a little bit. I think it does.
Yeah, I think so too. Because again, like you said, you're connecting with something, and while I don't think you have to always know the backstory behind what's in front of you, I think it definitely adds in depth and enjoyment to it when you can see what was created at different points in people's lives and go, man, like let's see, man, writing Henry David Thoreau and Walden's Pond, like that is definitely out of like a very specific time in a moment relating to a way of thinking that he was going through that would never have been written previously or before or after that. It adds a lot more where you go, okay, I understand fully why this is important and what this is trying to tell me, given XYZ that we're going on, which is kind of like when you look at it's when you take a historical approach to looking at as a literary device of going, okay, like let's look at the context of where and how and why this was written. That's going to tell us a lot about the structure, the formation, the beginning, middle, and end of this, versus just reading it and going, okay, well, cool, those are some words on a page, decent story, cool, that's awesome. It's adding more to it.
Oh yeah. So I think the best example of that comes to my mind immediately is like the Lost Generation writers from in between the world wars. Right?
Yeah.
That stuff is crazy. Like Hemingway, Fitzgerald, E. Cummings, Ford Maddox Ford, right? Like Gertrude Stein, Virginia Woolf, all these people, like I guess Tolkien technically there too, right? Like this time where all this writing took place, I am completely fascinated by these people, like so much. It's my favorite literary stuff to read. Like one of them, right? It's so interesting because of the historical context and the personal stories of these people, and like just how the world was changing after the First World War. Just like there was so much just like despair and uncertainty and all this stuff, and then the Depression and just all this time and place in history. This snapshot of this time is just, it's so interesting. And the writing that these people were doing because of the time and place that they were, I just find it really interesting, right? I just, it's so interesting to read that stuff, the poetry and the stories that came from these people experiencing these emotions and this just lost feeling of like, what do I do, right? Especially like Hemingway, right? Like, I'm in the war, I'm doing this stuff, and then the war is over, and oh my goodness, that was horrible, right? That like that slow realizational shift from the First World War of like, oh yeah, the war will be over by Christmas. And 4 years later, like,
Nope.
Just the complete loss of faith in like all the old systems and like how could the world become better because I have seen things that are absolutely the worst things of all time, and how do I deal with that, right? Like that environment created so much stuff, right? And I'm fascinated by it.
Yeah.
And so like that, how do you duplicate that? Right? Like that's a very emotional connection. Like for me, like I just because there's so much to connect, like the history and the sociology and the art and these people's personal stories, like all this stuff just is in this big ball in this time. And it's just so interesting. And I like when you take all that into account about what these people were doing, like all artists, not just like writers, but painters and stuff as well, like dealing with all this stuff, like how they expressed themselves and how they dealt with this trauma, that's crazy, you know, like I can't imagine AI giving you something that's that timeless and that interesting.
Right, because you can't exactly say, having experienced the awfuls of World War One, now write a reflection on the more idealized or the role that decadence plays in people reconnecting with their no, that's just not going to happen.
Right. Yeah, you're gonna miss some stuff,
sure,
right? And I would also be remiss if I did not mention a slightly earlier time period, if we would go back, you know, about 100 years before that. If you want to talk about emotional expression in art, your boy Francisco Goya, right? Those paintings are also just but like the circumstances in which they were created. Listeners, if you're not familiar with Goya, basically during the Spanish Civil War, right? He was going deaf right? And he was just supremely depressed and dealing with a lot of emotion. And he painted a series of paintings on the walls of his house called the Black Paintings. I think there's 14 of them.
Yeah.
They're called the Black Paintings because a lot of them are black in color and emotional content. There is some heavy stuff in what he painted.
Yeah.
And it comes from a place of just like, it's just awful.
Well, yeah,
depression. And
he was disillusioned. He was seeing the realities.
Anger.
Yeah, he was all alone. He was at towards the later end of his life, completely isolated from everything else. The reason, because he was battling depression and faced with the realities of the society that he was in and going like, this is not good anymore. The politically, socially, this is, you know, basically he was at the point of abandoning Spain because he no longer believed in it, and was now painting these. And you talk about some interest, and he was fascinating too because he was right there at the transition period, if I remember correctly, of like he was kind of like still old style, but also bringing in a lot that would be built off of for later artists. So he was
he's a hugely important artist outside of this.
But just the black paintings that in and of themselves, if you think about that, you're right, there were 14 or so, but they are not
Yeah, he was also going deaf due to an unknown illness. So he was dealing with the disillusionment of the fall of the Spanish government after the Napoleonic Wars and the Spanish Civil War. And he was like just hating the situation in Spain. And he was depressed because he was going deaf and he'd been sick. And so the stuff that he painted is just like, whoa. Right? Like, whoa. So when you look at the painting of like the dog, right, the El Perro painting, in that context, you just are kind of hit with this wave of like, oh, I get it. Like, I understand. Right? Like, yeah, that one is like, that's like, you can't, I don't think you can talk about an AI painting like that. Like, you can't have these emotional connections with people and this sort of like background understanding. And like, you're not gonna search up this information on like every artist that you encounter. But generally what happens with me is I will encounter something, and then if it is really interesting, then I want to know about the background. I want to know about where this came from. I want to know this, like, the history behind it. And then the fact that it was painted by a person means there's something there to find, So, yeah.
Okay. But, well, I'm sure we'll continue to have this discussion as more and more things come out and get produced and such. Because I think it'll be interesting to see how all that develops.
That's true. And we can do more art history later too, right? If you want to hear some more art history, listeners, I do love some.
Let's do that. Good. Well, we have, in closing, do you want to dive into the question that we posed at the end of last time?
Do you want to do it now, or do you want to save it for next time? What do you want?
We can save it let's save it for next time. We're coming up on an hour now and everything. So I think we'll save it. Let me add that to our notes.
All right, went off on a long tirade about Goya. Sorry, guys.
Next time, teaser. Next time we'll start off next time. I'm going to add it to the top of the notes right now. I don't even know.
Whatever. We're going to start off with whatever car you go. We need a car update.
No, we're not.
So, listeners, part 47 of Collin's Car Quest.
Never ends. Never ends. No. I promise we won't start with that. We'll just dive in. We'll jump in. We're going to answer.
All right, we'll finish with the car. We'll put the car quest.
So that people can do now.
Mixing it up so they can stop listening.
Didn't expect that.
Now they want to know.
So yeah, we'll start with which holidays have the best candy options, and we're going to rank the holidays for their candy.
Yes. Well, I was thinking about this. I feel like the best thing to do would be to just go through the holidays, talk about the candies that are available in each one that we like and or don't like, and then at the end
we'll rank them.
Give them rank them.
Yes,
right?
That's fine.
That's good, because Susan was yelling at me the other day about what my ranking should be, so we're going to have many thoughts on this, right? And again, this is because it is official candy season, because Reese's pumpkins are out.
So we know
that's how you know candy starts. So my thoughts on when this time period is, this candy holiday season, is basically holidays from now until Easter.
Okay.
Because that's when the candy stops. Right. So basically, Halloween, Christmas, Valentine's Day, Easter?
Yep.
Right? Because Thanksgiving doesn't have candy. So.
No, it doesn't.
Right.
Okay. Well, we will.
Does Hanukkah have candy? Do I need to research Hanukkah candy? Is this a thing I should do?
Well, but spend some time. That's what homework.
I don't know. I've never had any. So any listeners who can help us out with that, tell us your favorite holiday candies as well. So we'll get on that.
There you go. That's what we'll do next time. Dive right into that.
All right.
Okay. How do I stop this? Okay. Oh, I'm going to say, okay. Yeah. So all that sounds good. Okay. Love you. Bye.
Love you too. Bye.